Will Africa trade the West for BRICS? Nations like Burkina Faso are growing weary of their dependency on Western aid and the exploitation that comes with it. With BRICS offering a new partnership vision, these African countries are eager for change. They seek to break free and embrace alliances that promise equality, but with deep Western interests at stake, will these nations be able to make the transition without resistance? How has France responded to this? Let's find out. Burkina Faso, a West African nation, has captured global attention with its bold move to explore joining BRICS. This isn't just a geopolitical action. It marks a clear departure from Burkina Faso's long-standing alliances, especially with Western powers like France. So, what has prompted this sudden realignment? And more importantly, why now?
We see a lot of sovereign nations realizing that the entire international order has been unraveling before their eyes.
Internally, the country has faced years of political turmoil, security threats, and growing dissatisfaction with its dependency on Western aid. Since the military coup in 2022, which brought Captain Ibrahim Traoré to power, Burkina Faso's political scene has changed dramatically. The new government, particularly under Traoré, has openly criticized France's lingering influence, which many in the country associate with its unresolved issues, particularly its instability and lack of sovereignty. Historically, France has maintained a strong foothold in West Africa, especially in former colonies like Burkina Faso. From military interventions, like Operation Barkhane, to economic dependency through the CFA franc, which is directly linked to the French treasury, the West has had significant control over the region. Yet despite years of French military presence in the Sahel region, terrorism has surged. For example, jihadist groups have been gaining ground since 2015, attacking civilians and military alike, making it clear that the Western strategy of counterterrorism is not working. Burkina Faso, frustrated by these failures, has increasingly sought out alternative alliances. Externally, global power dynamics are shifting. Western dominance, particularly in Africa, is being challenged by emerging global players like BRICS. BRICS, in contrast to the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and World Bank, offers an alternative to Western-dominated international institutions. This shift comes at a time when many African nations are questioning their historical dependence on Western aid and military assistance. Recent coups in Mali and Niger, where governments similarly turned away from France and the West, exemplify a broader trend across the region. Burkina Faso's pivot towards BRICS represents an opportunity to escape the so-called aid for compliance model of the West, where financial support is conditioned on governance reforms that often align with Western ideals. By seeking BRICS membership, Burkina Faso is signaling its intent to align with nations that provide resources without the political strings attached. For example, China, one of BRICS's leading members, has established extensive partnerships across Africa, often providing infrastructure development without demanding governance changes. Why now? Timing in geopolitics is crucial. Burkina Faso's military government is capitalizing on the West's distraction by global challenges like the Ukraine war and economic issues at home. This allows Burkina Faso the space to realign its international relationships without immediate consequences from its traditional Western allies. Moreover, the military leadership, knowing that the global spotlight is elsewhere, has room for action. Joining BRICS would be more than symbolic. It would represent a strategic realignment, with Burkina Faso moving from reliance on Western security frameworks and economic models to partnerships that promise mutual benefit. The question remains, though, will this shift deliver the security and economic growth Burkina Faso hopes for, or will it merely swap one form of dependency for another, this time to Eastern powers? While BRICS offers alternatives to Western dominance, it comes with its complexities. Burkina Faso must ensure that this shift towards BRICS is a true step towards sovereignty and not another form of external dependency, this time with emerging powers in the East. But on the surface, what BRICS can offer to Burkina Faso that the West isn't even capable of? Not that it doesn't want to, but it isn't capable of. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. BRICS represents an entirely different approach to partnerships. We're talking about an alliance of nations that have been marginalized by the traditional global power structures dominated by the West. BRICS isn't just another economic club. It's a collective that has a genuine interest in rewriting the global rules in a way that benefits all members, especially countries like Burkina Faso. Here's where the West falters. It comes with a long history of neo-colonial strategies. For decades, Western powers have engaged in what they call development. But let's be honest, it's often laced with conditions, hidden agendas, and a paternalistic mindset. Sure, the West has resources, but its financial aid and investments usually come with strings attached. Whether it's structural adjustment programs from the IMF or trade deals that trap nations into dependency, the West's approach has always been one of dominance and control. Even when they extend a hand, it's rarely without expecting something in return, whether it's geopolitical influence, resource access, or economic leverage. Now, BRICS offers something fundamentally different: the opportunity for Burkina Faso to grow without the weight of dependency. BRICS isn't looking to make Burkina Faso a pawn in a geopolitical game, but rather a partner. Countries like China, India, Russia, Brazil, and South Africa understand what it means to break free from the old Western-dominated global order. And they aren't just about preaching development, they're proving it. China's Belt and Road Initiative BRI, for example, is reshaping global trade routes, but it's also pouring billions into Africa's infrastructure, energy, and technology sectors. This isn't just talk, it's massive investments in roads, railways, ports, and power plants, building the foundation that Burkina Faso can stand on for its long-term development. What makes BRICS special here? Unlike the West, BRICS isn't offering handouts in exchange for control. It's offering a platform for countries like Burkina Faso to rise on their terms. The West doesn't want to admit it, but they simply aren't capable of providing that kind of empowerment. It's not because they don't want to. Some might genuinely care, but their entire economic and political system is designed to keep poorer nations in a cycle of dependency. They want Burkina Faso to develop, but only in ways that align with their interests. Usually that means keeping access to natural resources and cheap labor. BRICS, on the other hand, is providing countries like Burkina Faso with access to resources, technology, and investment without the burden of being forced into a one-sided relationship. China's investment in renewable energy in Africa is a perfect example. Solar and wind projects like the Garissa Solar Power Plant in Kenya or South Africa's renewable energy plans funded by BRICS members are just the beginning. Burkina Faso can tap into that kind of support. These projects are designed to help Africa stand tall on its own, instead of being forever reliant on external powers. Here's the kicker. BRICS isn't just about money and projects, it's about power. For the first time, countries like Burkina Faso are being offered the chance to be part of a global economic system that isn't dominated by the US dollar, the IMF, or Western financial institutions. The new development bank NDB, set up by BRICS, is funding major infrastructure projects across Africa, and it's doing so without the stringent conditions imposed by Western lenders. The West wants to help, sure, but they're not capable of letting go of their need to control. Their entire system is built on maintaining power imbalances. BRICS, however, is built on the principle that the Global South can, and should, forge its path. Burkina Faso, under leadership like that of President Ibrahim Traoré, is seeking exactly this kind of empowerment. Traoré has made it clear. His nation doesn't want to be another footnote in the West's geopolitical playbook. He's rejecting Western financial aid and looking toward partnerships that respect his country's sovereignty. The West simply isn't equipped to offer that because it's never been their priority. Even in moments of goodwill, the West's offers come packaged with obligations that limit true independence. BRICS, on the other hand, represents a coalition of nations that have lived through similar struggles. China, South Africa, and India have all dealt with the impacts of colonialism, exploitation, and being sidelined by Western powers. They get it. So, what can BRICS offer that the West isn't capable of? Freedom. Not just from economic dependency, but from a system that has for too long dictated the futures of countries like Burkina Faso. BRICS offers the chance for Burkina Faso to stand alongside nations that are shaping the future, not being shaped by it. The West can't do that. It's not in their DNA. They want to help, but their help always comes with a leash. BRICS offers collaboration, respect, and the tools for real sovereign growth. And that's exactly what Burkina Faso needs at this critical moment. Now the question is, how has the West reacted to Burkina Faso joining BRICS?
So the original first four countries are actually the biggest developing country from their respective region. Originally, it was intended to be a counter-narrative to the popular grouping of advanced industrial countries like G7.
Now, let's get deep into how the West has truly reacted to Burkina Faso's bold move of joining BRICS. On the surface, you'll hear all the polished diplomatic phrases about respecting Burkina Faso's sovereign decision and embracing multipolar partnerships. But come on, we know there's a lot more bubbling under that calm exterior. In reality, the West is rattled, and for good reason. This isn't just a simple alliance shift. Burkina Faso's alignment with BRICS represents a profound challenge to the established global order, one that the West has dominated for decades. First, let's break down the economics of it all. For years, Burkina Faso, like many African nations, has been tethered to Western financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. These institutions, while often framed as helping nations develop, come with strings attached. The West has used them as tools of influence, demanding austerity measures, imposing structural adjustments, and steering countries like Burkina Faso towards economic models that prioritize Western interests over local growth. It's no secret that these institutions have a knack for keeping countries in a loop of dependency. So, when Burkina Faso steps into the BRICS fold, they're essentially cutting off that dependency. They now have access to the new development bank NDB, BRICS financial powerhouse, which offers funding for infrastructure and development without the strangling conditions that Western financial aid always comes with. Make no mistake, the West is worried. This isn't just about losing influence over Burkina Faso's economy. It's about the broader implications. If Burkina Faso can break free from the grips of Western financial control, who's next? Could other African nations follow suit? The West's carefully constructed financial order, the one that's been keeping developing nations tied to their economic models, is at risk of unraveling. And then, there's the geopolitical aspect, which is where the West starts to sweat. For decades, Africa has been treated as a strategic playground by Western powers. The continent is rich in natural resources: gold, uranium, oil, you name it. And Western nations have always found ways to maintain control, whether through military bases, aid programs, or strategic partnerships. But Burkina Faso's move toward BRICS is a signal that Africa is no longer content to play the same game. This isn't just about Burkina Faso either. It's about a broader realignment that sees African nations gravitating towards the BRICS bloc, particularly China and Russia, who offer more equal partnerships without the neo-colonial baggage. Now let's get into the fear that's creeping through the halls of Western capitals. BRICS isn't just an economic and political bloc. It's an ideological challenge. For decades, the West has sold its brand of democracy, free markets, and human rights as the only legitimate path to development. But now, countries like Burkina Faso are looking to BRICS as a viable alternative. BRICS doesn't preach the same values that the West has imposed on developing nations for years. Instead, it offers a model of growth that's more suited to the needs and ambitions of countries like Burkina Faso, focused on infrastructure, industrial development, and trade, without the ideological conditions attached. The West, which has long been the arbiter of how development should look, is terrified of losing control over the narrative. If Burkina Faso, with its deep historical ties to France and the West, can make a break and thrive under BRICS guidance, what's stopping other nations from doing the same? The fear isn't just economic or political, it's existential. It challenges the very core of the West's global dominance. You can bet that behind those polite diplomatic statements, Western policymakers are in overdrive, trying to figure out how to mitigate this shift. They'll likely ramp up their PR campaigns about democracy and human rights, painting BRICS as a bloc that doesn't share these values. But let's be honest, this is more about control than values. BRICS, and by extension Burkina Faso's choice to join, threatens to upend the very system that has allowed the West to maintain economic and political dominance in Africa for so long. Moreover, BRICS offers Burkina Faso and other African nations something the West has never been able to genuinely provide: equality and sovereignty. For years, African nations have been treated as junior partners, with Western powers dictating the terms of economic aid and political partnerships. BRICS, on the other hand, presents itself as a partnership of equals. Burkina Faso, now part of BRICS, can sit at a table where its voice matters, where decisions about its future aren't being made behind closed doors in Washington, Paris, or London. It's no wonder the West is nervous. BRICS isn't just about economic benefits, it's about reshaping global power dynamics. It's about Burkina Faso saying, "We won't be told what to do anymore." And that's a message the West isn't used to hearing, especially from a former colony like Burkina Faso. To sum it all up, the West's reaction is a mix of public diplomacy and private panic. While they might not openly admit it, the fact is clear. Burkina Faso joining BRICS is a major blow to the Western grip on Africa. It's a signal that the old world order is shifting, and African nations are looking elsewhere for partnerships that respect their sovereignty. The West wants to keep its influence intact, but the reality is that it might not be capable of doing so as more nations like Burkina Faso find alternatives in BRICS. Let's suppose the West puts pressure on Burkina Faso. With BRICS, will Burkina Faso be able to deal with it? In the case of economic pressure, as we talked about earlier, NDB got Burkina Faso covered. If the West tries to diplomatically isolate Burkina Faso, the nation's alliance with BRICS would provide a strong counterbalance. BRICS countries, China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, represent a substantial portion of the global population and have significant influence in international forums like the United Nations. These nations could push back against any diplomatic sanctions or efforts to delegitimize Burkina Faso on the global stage. One of the key ways Burkina Faso can withstand Western pressure is by diversifying its trade relationships through BRICS. Right now, the West, particularly the EU and France, still has considerable influence over African economies, including Burkina Faso's. But by joining BRICS, Burkina Faso can open new trade routes and partnerships. China is a massive market for African goods, and the potential for increased trade with BRICS countries reduces Burkina Faso's dependency on Western markets. Let's not overlook the fact that the West has historically used destabilization tactics, either directly or through proxies, to exert control over African nations. If Burkina Faso aligns itself too strongly with BRICS, it might face efforts to undermine its political stability. But with BRICS, particularly Russia's growing influence in providing security assistance to African nations, Burkina Faso could tap into resources that offer military support, intelligence sharing, and security infrastructure. Russia's Wagner Group, for example, has already been involved in security operations in other African nations, providing a deterrent against external threats. While this may raise eyebrows in the West, it's a realistic option for Burkina Faso if it faces attempts to destabilize its government. Finally, Burkina Faso aligning itself with BRICS shifts the narrative on a global scale. More and more nations, particularly in the global south, are turning away from Western-led models of development and looking to BRICS for alternatives. Burkina Faso, by positioning itself as part of this emerging bloc, can frame itself as a leader in the fight for a multipolar world order, one where African nations aren't beholden to Western powers. This would not only win Burkina Faso allies in other parts of Africa, but also among nations in Asia and Latin America who are similarly frustrated with Western dominance. So, if the West pushes, Burkina Faso, with BRICS by its side, won't be standing alone, and it may very well prove resilient in the face of pressure. Do you think the West should try to control Burkina Faso? Can it even do that? Will West officially give up? Let us know in the comment section. Do you think that with BRICS, Burkina Faso's future is secure? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.